and welcome to Unity Church. A special welcome to those of you who are visiting with us today in these complicated times. This morning we tune in from our singular rooms to join together in worship. Welcome to this time we set aside each week to help us find and keep our balance, to think about those things that matter most, and to align our lives to integrity, service, and joy. Here in the Ames Chapel, your worship leaders gather, learning as we lead, to offer clarity and comfort in these trying times. We know that nothing can replace the face-to-face, hand-in-hand, voices joined in song, embodied worship that being in each other's company can bring. And we also know the ministry we share has never been about a building. In the coming days and weeks, we'll be finding new ways to come together for worship, for learning, for deep connection, for justice-making, and for love. Friends, our financial obligations do continue. Please remember to be generous with the church itself and with our many neighbors and friends with whom we are in partnership in the world. The larger portion of our offering worship associate this morning, Leah Rivamonte, a wonderful poet and painter, artist and friend, is not feeling terribly well and thought it wise to stay home. So I have the honor to share her words with you. When I need to feel whole or to return to myself, I turn to art. And while any full-blown artistic experience that appeals to my own very personal aesthetic will serve, painting is the most immediate and accessible to me. I'm not sure why. Growing up, my neighbor was the local high school art teacher. We kids used to watch him paint in his garage studio. He wore a beret, and he was Jewish. That alone had a huge appeal for this Catholic schoolgirl. His subjects were figurative, highly colored, and expressionistic. My parents would occasionally borrow his work to see if they liked it enough to buy. Many of Bill's paintings hung on our walls, but to my knowledge, none was purchased, which would have been typical behavior for my dad, whose modus operandi consisted of always getting something for nothing. While they refused to actually buy any of Bill's work, my parents never hesitated in investing in their daughter. I was 10 when I got my first oil paints and was set for life. I have since discovered other creative disciplines that have sustained me over the years, but there's nothing like losing myself in the act of painting that feeds the deepest core of my being. And when I encounter a painting that invites me to enter into it and stay for a while in the world that has been imagined there, I am replenished. It's one of the ways I practice resilience. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning, friends. Good morning, families and children who are becoming a regular at the live stream worship service on Sunday mornings. We all know that people have been told to work from home. Large events have been canceled, and we're all practicing this thing called social distancing. The public health professionals, they are reminding us over and over again that social distancing is a vitally important thing that everyone must do to slow down the transmission of this virus. But you know, for many people, many of us, there's a side effect to this health practice, a side effect to this medicine, if you will, which is furthering our sense of social isolation. And we all know, the scientists tell us, that isolation and loneliness can also make us sick. So as I think about social distancing, it seems like on the one hand, it's really meant to prevent the transmission of the virus and keep us healthy and safe, but it can also create loneliness and cause us to feel sick. It's actually a paradoxical medicine. And yet, when I think about it, in many of the world's faith traditions, we know of teachers who went into the mountains and the deserts and the forests seeking seclusion and solitude for periods of time. We know that there were hermits and yogis and monks who went to the caves of the Zhongnan Mountains in China, or they went into the Egyptian deserts. They might have even gone into a cabin near Walden Pond somewhere. We know about these hermits, and I'm thinking especially about a monk.
Back up a little bit. I mean, in the story. And if you can pick up.
Many, many years ago, I'm thinking about a monk named Thomas Burton, who went into his small hermitage in a Trappist monastery in Kentucky. If you asked him, he would have said, I'm not going there to seclude and isolate and disconnect from people. I'm actually, he said paradoxically, going there so that I can learn how to connect with people, but connect more skillfully, connect in a more healing way. He wanted to learn how to find quiet in his heart, how to let his anxious and fearful mind learn to rest, how to live more simply, and how to listen for the things that mattered most. Like a different and new way of how to relate to one another. How people can, in a different way, learn how to depend on one another. Because as he listened to society and the world, it was turning people more and more into rhinoceroses. That was his word. Rhinoceros that were stubborn and hard-headed. Rhinoceros that were rough with people. People who were charging into the future without learning how to listen, to slow down, to wait, learning how to trust. And so Thomas Merton went into his tiny hermitage on the Trappist monastery grounds, practicing social distancing, a very mysterious and paradoxical medicine indeed. One night, it started to rain and rain and rain. And he listened like he never listened before to whatever the rain had to tell him. And he said, it rained in big syllables, because the rain doesn't fall like quiet water, but in many voices and cacophonies and accents as the rain was falling and shaped by the leaves, the tree branches, the rocks, the puddles, the tin roof, all translating and interpreting in their own way. The rain, which was a language pouring out, and with so many interpreters and instruments shaping the song. And the whole world was there in the song, singing together, singing around him, singing in him, and Thomas Merton felt like he was the song. He was connected, that all of us were connected, that we were made from strains of this one song. As I listened, he later wrote, the rain was reminding me that the world runs on rhythms that I had not yet learned to recognize. And so he was asking us to listen in solitude, to recognize these rhythms that can teach us how to connect to one another and recreate community and recreate how we can depend upon one another. And so after the rain, he sat down to write down one of his most important and mature essays entitled The Rain and the Rhinoceros. Perhaps for all of us, as we too are practicing social distancing, what if this paradoxical and creative medicine is meant for a time just as this? May it be so, and amen.
Let us enter into the silence together. Each time we gather for worship, we set aside a moment to expand the caring ministry of this congregation. Together we recognize the cycle of life and death, the circle of love, compassion, and witness that is at the center of this and every sacred community. We stand at the side of parents and teachers and all those whose primary spiritual practice is caring for children, with those who live with grief and chronic pain, with illnesses seen and unseen, with mental disability or addiction. We pray for our neighbors in prison, those who care for family members in ill health, those who are struggling to stay afloat in the midst of poverty. And our lives are blessed by those who knowingly and with curiosity and courage face their final days, and by all those who rise above heartbreak to challenge oppression in all its many forms. We pray for those in harm's way, for the wisdom and the strength of the leaders of the world, and for the people of this courageous congregation, as together we live into our longing to embody the beloved community. Will you pray with me for these we now name? We hold Phil Carlson, his wife Janet Lawson, and children James and Ellen, as they grieve the death of Phil's father, James K. Carlson, who died yesterday morning. We hold all of those around us who are facing the loss of employment, as we all learn to cope with financial uncertainty. May we be reminded of those who have always lived in poverty. We pray for all those who are facing illness and those who are courageously and compassionately caring for them. Lastly, we are thrilled to celebrate Wendy Harris, who was named a National Master Teacher by the Library of Congress. Wendy is an educator at Metro Deaf School and is one of only 10 teachers who to be so honored this year. May we stand in compassionate solidarity with our neighbors here at home and all around the world. May they, and may we, be instruments of a lasting peace. I now invite you to speak aloud in your own homes and to hold in the silent sanctuary of your hearts the names of those that you would like to lift up in our worship this morning.
Our many colleagues and their congregations.
And now, as I invite you to pray with me, I invite you to settle into that still, quiet place within, to relax, to take a deep breath, and to enter into this moment of prayer and meditation together. Spirit of life and love, God of our hearts, source of our being and becoming, help us to breathe into this moment, to find our center, to feel the shared warmth of our chalice flames, kindled in connection and faith and love. May we be present to the confusion of these days, the doubt and fear, the disappointment and worry, the anger and frustration, that we might share and lighten our burdens. May we be present to the courage of these days, the love and gratitude, the hope and generosity, the determination and creativity as we find new ways of being, new ways of connection, that we might bear witness together to the resilient spirit of our humanity. May we be present to the possibility of these days as we respond to the needs of our community, as we care for one another, as we stay vigilant for justice and for equity, that we might together find new ways to be in solidarity and to create hope for our world. Help us to breathe into this moment of peace and to feel the strength of our shared faith and the larger love that holds us. Amen, and blessed be.
Amen.
And will you join us now in singing Spirit of Life?
Poem by Leah Rivamonte, After Baton. Grandpa tended roses, enormous perianth curls swollen with color, yellow, deep burgundy, pink, their pale trunks naked and upright. He tied their errant arms to stakes laid out in perfect circles of pebbled dirt, apprising each, snipping, standing, crouching, snipping, pinching soil between thumb and forefinger, dancing a prim minuet between each bush. Nothing in his tendering spoke of the brutality, grim slog on a road, tripping over dead, 68 miles under a shroud of heavy yellow heat, prodded by bayonets, stench of rotted flesh betraying the perfume of ditch blooms. Only silence as he plied each pedal, transfixed by its soft indifference.
It is so good to be here with you this morning. I miss being able to see each of you and to greet you by name as you enter the church on your way to worship. In many ways, our roles are reversed today. You are welcoming me and bringing unity into your home, to be with your family and your pets and your home sanctuary, as we find new ways to create worship and to be in community together. Thank you. Know that this morning, as we explore the personal practice of resilience, that your presence with me is part of the strength and the comfort that I feel in these days. In these strange times, as we're all learning about social distancing and isolation, or cocooning, as one of my friends has said, I've been thinking back to a very difficult time in my life when I was a teenager. I had fallen in love, which is a wonderful thing. But because my friend was frightened to tell her family, we had to keep it to ourselves for a while. And to be honest, I didn't know what to do. I had all of these thoughts swirling around in my head. I had a range of emotions up and down as I wasn't sure what this would mean. And I felt alone in new ways because I couldn't turn to the people I normally relied on. I'm not sure how I came up with this idea, but one day, as I was sitting in my room and feeling somewhat sad, I decided to take my Walkman and to go for a walk in the neighborhood. Now, if you don't know what a Walkman is, think Guardians of the Galaxy. So I took my Walkman and I went out to the streets. And for a while, I couldn't even pay attention to the music I was hearing. My brain jumped from one random thought to the other. But then, as I kept walking, my body began to settle into the rhythm of the movement. And I began to listen to the melodies of the music. And I began to see the houses and the yards going by. And when I came home at the end of the walk, even though I hadn't solved anything, I felt better. I felt more centered, and I pledged to myself that I would take my Walkman out for a walk each and every day. I found different tapes for different moods. I had my own version of An Awesome Mix, Volume 1. I had my sad tape and my happy tape. I had my angry tape. I had my nature sounds tape that had the wind and the ocean and the rain. But as I walked each day, and I would take mostly the same path, something unexpected happened to me. I began to feel more comfortable with my own company, with my own thoughts, my own ideas about how I might get through this challenging time. And I began to have a sense of my own strength in a way that I'm not sure I would have discovered otherwise. So I learned that one way to practice personal resilience is by making friends with my own self, the inner life. And this is something that I think we're all having to explore, as KP mentioned, in these days of COVID-19. Even though it can be scary, even though it can be something that we don't want to have to do. One of my favorite writers, May Sarton, reflects a lot in her writing about the difference between isolation and solitude. An amazing poet, she struggled with depression for much of her life, but found that the quest for true solitude was something that helped her to find and keep her balance. Returning to her home in the woods just after her 60th birthday, she once wrote these words: "I am here alone in the woods to take up my real life again at last. This is what is strange, that friends, even passionate love, are not my real life, unless there is time to think about what is happening, time to think about what has happened." Now, I don't think that she is discounting her friends or her lovers at all, but what she's saying is that the time she carves out for solitude deepens her appreciation for them, helps her to be more present to them. Walking with music isn't the only way to discover our own strength and comfort, to become comfortable in our own company. Sometimes it's found on the yoga mat. Sometimes it's found on our living room couch as we're sitting journaling. Sometimes it's found at the dining room table as we're creating art. Sometimes it can be found in prayer or in meditation, or in lighting the chalice at our home, and simply pausing for a few minutes to think in gratitude of the good things of our day. But there was something else that I discovered in those long walks of my youth, something that the hermit in KP's story also discovered. At first, that hermit thought that the meaning of being a hermit was to be alone, to be by himself, until he realized that even as a hermit, he was connected to everything. To the grass beneath his feet, to the sounds of the rain coming down, to the clouds in the sky above his head. I began to notice those things on my walks alone, too. There was one particular tree that I paid attention to every day as I passed it. It was a very old tree. It was twisted in some places. It had lost some of its bark. And at some point over the years, it had split so that its branches formed huge arms, so wide that they looked like they were trying to hug the whole sky, so wide that it looked like the tree might even lose its balance and tip over. I walked by that tree every day and I noticed it. And I thought about all of the years that it had seen, all of the storms and winters it had weathered, all of the amazing springs it had seen, all of the summer days where the children might have been climbing in its branches. And I thought to myself, if that tree could make it through all those years and still stand so rooted, so strong, with its arms wide open to the world, then I should be able to find a way to do that too. When we talk about our seventh principle, the interconnected web of all existence, I think back to that tree and the lessons that it taught me. Unitarian Universalist minister Harry Schofield had a name for seeking out this kind of connection as a practice of resilience. He talked about the spiritual practice of kinship, of finding time to regularly name and honor all of the connections that make us family to one another and family to the earth. Sometimes the practice of kinship means making friends with a tree or the roses in our yard. Sometimes it means taking time daily to hold each of our family members and our friends in our hearts, maybe even before we've even seen them or had a chance to talk to them that day. Sometimes the practice of kinship means bringing our ancestors into the room. Like many of you, I've created in my home in the past week a Zoom nook, a place where I can sit and see you and meet with you and continue our ministry in new ways. I have a chalice sitting by my computer, a chalice to remind me of each of you in our shared ministry, a chalice to remind me of the Unitarian Universalists around the world who are also living out their values, and also to remind me of the Unitarian Universalists who have gone before us, who did their best in their own times, in the challenges and joys of their own moments, to live out their faith in the world. I also have some books, sermons from my childhood minister, poems written by friends, a couple of Jewish Bibles from my grandparents. I have photos of family and friends, and above my computer hangs a large oil painting that was painted by my grandpa Bill, who, after retiring from a long career as an engineer, took up art for the first time. As I sit down to work every day in my little Zoom nook, I am reminded that my life is woven into a larger tapestry of life and love and wisdom that is holding me still, even in this time of great change and great doubt. Here at Unity, we often talk about our hope that each of us will find a personal spiritual practice, something that helps us find and keep our balance each day. And we also talk about the importance to find connection with each other, to go deep in meaningful ways in our conversations and our exploration of the meaning of the world. And we believe here at Unity that if we do those two things, a third practice will emerge, a practice of resilience and hope. That we will find ways to more deeply love and bless the world as individuals and as community. And I don't know about you, but I have seen evidence each and every day of this past week of this practice of resilient love. From your own offers to help one another and to reach out, to the picture of the two children who played a concert on their front porch for their elderly neighbor, to the free meals and support that local restaurants are offering to all of the students who are suddenly without the support of their school community. Now I know that the practice of love and blessing isn't perfect. It still leaves room to get on each other's nerves, to lose our tempers, to even cry or yell at times. Practices of resilience leave room for struggle and fear too. But the practice of love reminds us that we each have a choice about the world we want to see, the world we want to live in, and a choice about how we will try to create that world with our own actions each and every day. For when we trust the strength within ourselves, when we trust the strength that is woven among us, we can lend that strength and resilience in powerful ways to exactly such a time as this. The author, Brian Andreas, creator of Story People, reminds us of this power and reminds us of the importance of everyday heroes. He writes, anyone can slay a dragon, but try waking up every morning and loving the world all over again. That's what takes a real hero. So my friends, in this moment, in these times of new beginnings, of opening a new way of being together and living out our values and love in the world, we each become heroes in resilience and in love and in our power to bless. In these days of unknowing and unfolding, may we help one another to discover our own strength, to reclaim our kinship, to wake up each morning to love this beautiful and troubled and amazing world anew. Blessings to each of you. We love you, now and always. Amen.
Amen.
And will you join us in singing This Little Light of Mine? Trust your own strength. Trust your connection to one another. Trust your power to love in this day and in all the days to come. We are in this together, and our light shines as a beacon to all who have need of it. So may it be.